Are we there yet? Keith had already shouted that question over the whipping wind at least 14 times. If he repeated it a 15th, Sophie was going to shove him into the dark waves below. No, for the millionth time. You'll know when we are because we'll stop flying. Okay, that's how I'll know when we're there. But how are you going to know? Because it's been a whole lot of stars and ocean. And oh hey, look, there's some stars and ocean. And I'm kind of starting to wonder if that's all we're ever going to see. Sophie held the compass to the moonlight and told Sylvanie to fly a bit more to the left. I'll know when I see it. She really hoped that was true. Key fidgeted behind her, nearly knocking them off balance. Careful, Sophie shouted as Sylvanie tipped up her wing to catch them. Sorry, I'm just trying to stay warm. He fidgeted again. Can we play a game or something? Oh, how about truth or dare? I can think of some awesome dares. I kind of need to concentrate here. He sighed so dramatically Sophie could hear it over the wind's roar. I'm guessing a tickle war is out of the question, he asked, because you're pretty vulnerable right now. Try it and see what happens. You do realize that just makes me want to do it more, right? I'm serious, Keith. I know, that's the problem. He shifted his weight. How about you, Glitterbutt? You as bored as me? Keith. What's she saying? That you're annoying and she wants to dump you in the ocean? Well, I know that's not true. Glitterbutt loves me, don't you, Glitterbutt? Sylvanie whinnied as he patted her side. Sophie rolled her eyes. Keith shifted again. Gotta say, Glitterbutt, you are not as comfortable as I'd like you to be. We need to fatten you up next time so you're softer. Hopefully there won't be a next time. What? You don't want to make this a regular thing? Sophie shook her head. It's a little different for me, Keith. There's kind of a lot riding on this. Like your health and your future and Alden's health and stuff? Which I thought you cared about. Alden, at least. He was quiet for a few seconds, and Sophie thought he was going to ignore her. But then he leaned closer, close enough that she could feel his breath on her cheek as he said, I know I crack a lot of jokes, Sophie, but that's just because it's easier, you know? It's how I deal. That doesn't mean I don't care. I do. A lot. She was suddenly very aware of how close he was, and the way his arms were around her. She felt her cheeks flame and hoped he couldn't feel the change in her mood. Are you scared? He asked quietly. She shrugged, not trusting her voice. You don't have to be. I meant what I told Sandor. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. She wanted to tell him he didn't have that kind of power. Instead, she cleared her throat and said, Thank you. He leaned back, taking his warmth with him, but at least she felt like she could breathe again. So, tell me about the Black Swan, he said. What are we up against? I wish I knew. It's not like they tell me anything. Yeah, they do seem to like keeping their sense of mystery. Reminds me of someone else I know. He poked her side. She smiled at the joke, but it also hit a nerve. Do you think I hide too much? Her voice had barely been louder than the wind, but Keith still asked, What do you mean? Grady and Edeline think I keep too many secrets. You do, he agreed, but I'm guessing you've sort of had to, right? I mean, look at the kind of things you deal with. I don't really know how you do it. Sometimes she didn't either. She checked the compass again, steering Sylvanie back to the right. You can trust Grady and Edeline, though, he added after a second. You got good parents there. Parents, not guardians. They were slowly starting to feel like that. Things have been a little better with your parents too, haven't they? She asked, hoping she wasn't intruding. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. They only like when I do things they want me to do. Like this. My dad loves that I'm helping you. Probably because everything you do seems to, change the course of history and whatever. But it'd be nice if they could be proud of something I like to do. Maybe it would help if the stuff you like to do didn't involve goulons or glittery poop. Probably, but that's way less fun. Maybe we could just try... Her voice trailed off as a dark shape appeared on the horizon, silhouetted by the moonlight. Tall, rocky cliffs jutted out over the ocean, and when she checked the compass, the needle pointed straight to them. Is that? Keith asked. I think it might be. She nudged Sylvanie to fly faster, keeping her eyes trained on the compass as the cliffs drew closer. The silver-white slopes of the rocky ledges came into focus, bright and gleaming in the pale moonlight. And Sophie felt goosebumps prickle her skin as she noticed a dark smudge toward the top of them. A cave. That's it, Sophie whispered as a memory prickled her mind. The dark cavern had a distinct curved shape, and she could see a perfect image of it in her memory, which meant they'd always meant for her to find them someday. She instructed Sylvanie to land on the ledge outside the entrance. Keith tightened his grip on her waist as they swooped to a stop, and he helped Sophie slide down Sylvanie's neck to the rocky ground. Okay, the legs are not happy, Keith complained as he took a few wobbly steps. Remind me never to take up horseback riding. Sophie's legs were throbbing too, but she was too distracted by the pitch-black entrance to the cave. So I'm guessing we have to go into the scary black cavern of doom? Keith asked, sighing when Sophie nodded. Yeah, and I was afraid of that. I love that neither of us thought to bring a light either. You don't need one, a gravelly voice said from the shadows, making both Keith and Sophie scream. Dude, that was not cool, Keith said as a hairy brown dwarf skulked out in the moonlight. The dwarf laughed, a clunky sound like a spoon caught in a garbage disposal. We need to get out of sight. Can you lead your horse inside? I think so, Sophie stammered, wishing Sylvanie could send her some of her calm. But the jittery alicorn was more terrified than she was. Trust, Sophie told her. Come. She followed the dwarf toward the cave, and after a few steps, Keith and Sylvanie followed. As soon as they were inside, the dwarf flipped a switch, and blue flame torches sprang to life all along the rocky walls that curved around them. The cave was much shallower than she'd expected. Won't someone see the light? Sophie asked. The cloaking is back up. I took it down when I felt you draw close, so you could find us. You felt us? Keith whispered. Sophie pointed to the Magician swan on her bracelet. Whoa, dwarves are freaky. I was not told there would be two of you. There would be two. The dwarf grumbled. Only a girl and a horse. My parents wouldn't let me come alone. The dwarf made some sort of sound, a bit like a growl. I think he likes me, Keith whispered, earning himself another growl. Sophie looked around as far as she could tell. It was just a normal cave, smaller than the one at Havenfield even. Is this it? Until you eat this. The dwarf handed her a plate with what looked like a cookie on it. A black swan. Written in some sort of icing were the words, "Then let's rest." Tucked in the branches of your quiet nest, Sophie finished, remembering the final line of the poem. So, this is a sedative? You cannot see where I take you. Come on, isn't this whole mystery thing a bit overkill? Keith asked. Don't worry, there's no cookie for you. You can stay with the horse. What? But he's with... The dwarf held up his hand, silencing both of them. Only you. Keith glanced at Sophie. He's like 3 feet tall and all fur. I think we can take him. That would not be wise. The dwarf stomped his foot and a crack split the ground, stopping just before Keith's toes. Another inch and he would have been swallowed by the gap. Sophie cleared her throat and took a deep breath for courage. It'll be fine, Keith. In fact, maybe it'll be better. I don't think Sylvanie would do well here all alone. Keep her company. But there's only one cookie, she told him, picking up the tiny swan. Keith stared at the crack on the ground and back at her. You're sure? She wasn't, but she'd come this far. Her head screamed at her to toss the horrible, revolting sedative away, but she shoved the cookie in her mouth before she could change her mind. As soon as the sweet, fruity flavor hit her tongue, her head clouded and she could barely swallow the bite. I'll be right here when you... Keith called, but the darkness stole the rest of his words, leaving her alone in the black.